Alright everyone, it's time for today's first video talking about, yes, the police are not there to protect you, not a specific part of their job description. Well, it tends to happen anyway, but yeah, they're law enforcement officers. And that is actually okay. Some people are complaining about the concept and saying, well, we need to do something. The police need to protect and serve, so we need to reform the way policing is done. I do agree with police reform. I think that metro forces should be dissolved. All officers should be elected or deputized. They should be sheriffs, constables, and sheriff's deputies. And that's basically it. There's more accountability. You don't need to have a big-ass union. You don't need commissioners. You don't need these things. This is the way that most of the U.S. functioned for most of its history. It works better. We see that sheriff's departments typically are better functioning. They're more efficient, number one. And number two, there is relatively less brutality and corruption probes and shit like that among these individuals. When you have to run for that office, when it's effectively an elected position, typically you're policing within a region. You know your constituents, some of them, they're literally your neighbors. There's going to be greater accountability. And nobody should be policing outside of the area in which they live. There's a provision for state police, of course, you know, highway patrol and shit, for what it's worth. But generally speaking, I believe in dissolving metro forces across the United States. In replacement for this, you simply have more elected officials. Here's the thing, though. People need to get off the idea that police should be there specifically to protect you. They are called law enforcement officers for a reason. They're there to make sure that the peace is upheld and the law is followed, and to drag people in for potential prosecution if that's not the case. You are responsible for protecting yourself, you and your community. This is why we need nationwide stand your ground, castle doctrine, and much more of the neighborhood watch sort of mentality. People should do it generally themselves. The person who is first going to respond to a burglary in your home is not the cops, it's you. The first person who's responding to a mass shooting event is going to be someone in proximity to that shooting. We saw this the other day in Indiana. Attempted mass shooter ends up getting aired out by a private citizen, hailed as a good guy with a gun and a good Samaritan by all the people around him. If you had waited for the cops to arrive, if this citizen had not taken immediate action to liquidate the gunman, you wouldn't have 4 people dead, one of which is the gunmen themselves, good riddance to trash. It probably would have been dozens of people. It would have been much more. The police simply cannot respond immediately to literally everything under the sun. There's the old saying, the cops take 20 minutes and your gun takes 0.2 seconds, or something along those lines. This is also why we need to defeat any semblance of safe storage laws. This is the Patriot Act equivalent of the anti-gun laws that are out there. Of course, if your gun is locked away in a safe with a gun lock on it and the ammo stored separately, it's going to take a little bit longer to respond to the home invader. The would-be rapist, maybe they want to drag off your kids, maybe they want to steal your dog and sell it to a restaurant somewhere on Skid Row. Regardless of the situation, you are the one that has to respond to that. Now you can respond by dialing 911, locking yourself in your room. How do you know that they don't immediately trash your entire house? By the way, your insurance may not cover that damage. Maybe they light it on fire, try to burn you out. Maybe they just, because they don't care about gun laws, maybe they just shoot your door open and then kick the shit out of you and drag you off and carve out your kidneys and sell them on a Chinese black market trade or something. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. If someone breaks in your window at 3 a.m., you can assume ill intent. You should probably have a firearm and you should defend yourselves. The cops are not there to do that for you. Yes, cops in general, the bad cops aside, will generally attempt to protect the public. If someone is actively shooting, the cops will fire back out of a sense of self-preservation. And this is also one reason why not only should everyone be armed, we should also have armed teachers. Here's the basic principle behind that. Some people say, well, that wouldn't make any sense. Yes, it does. Let's say that you have a teacher in a classroom, 20, 30 kids, and a gunman marches into the school and starts shooting things. They go into the classroom. The first person they're probably going to aim for is the teacher. The teacher has a gun. They'll fire in self-defense. It doesn't even matter if they care about the students. They're probably a coward, like most people tend to be. They don't want confrontation. Hell, maybe they're a total pacifist. but they don't want to die. And so there's a chance that the gunman immediately gets stopped, injured, killed, whatever. At the very least, there's a chance the kids get out safely because there's one potential good person with a gun there that either cares or at least cares about their own mortality. Yes, it's a great idea. In your home, the same applies. On the road, the same applies. Everyone should be armed, generally speaking, at all times they possibly can. If you want to have gun-free zones filled with guards, it's going to be something like a court or a government building. Well, I don't see many guards in the schools. I don't see a guard outside of your house. You are the guard. That's the whole point. It's okay that the police aren't specifically there to protect you, because the whole principle of a free society made up of citizens as opposed to subjects is that they have the ability to defend themselves. This is the biggest argument for the recension of gun laws, anti-gun laws, NFA, etc. This is the biggest argument for the abolition of the concept of a duty to retreat, especially on your own property, which does extend to your vehicle. This certainly extends to the ability to brandish a firearm if you are being threatened, to try to ward off attack. In fact, by the way, and this is a statistic you never hear from the lamestream media, in most cases where a gun is used defensively, it's never even fired. It's just flashed. Person's trying to mug you. They whip out a knife. Give me your money. You say, oh, look, my 38 special argues otherwise. Go the fuck away. Leave me alone. 9 times out of 10, that person's going to turn tail and run because they're not trying to murder you. They're trying to rob you. Well, they don't want any of that shit, and so they leave. And then they live to mug another person. Maybe the next one doesn't have a gun, and they're the ones that have to give up their money. To be clear, when I'm in the United States, I'm armed basically at all times. If there were a mass shooting attempt around me, damn right I'm going to respond. Even if I don't give a shit about the people in the crowd, I don't want to get shot. I don't want anyone that I care about getting shot. Well, then I'm going to be potentially the good guy with a gun. And if I get killed in the process, they're already killing people, so what the fuck is the difference? At least I have a chance, right? And a fairly good aim. It tends to be at close proximity that those things happen, so a handgun in those situations or a revolver is probably fine. To be clear, in the United States, I'll be talking about this later, both the Indiana case and the anti-gun paranoia that we're seeing. One of the articles that I've linked is actually from someone who's from Britain, so naturally they don't understand as much about firearms. You're living in an urban area, you're from a no-guns country. Yes, let's lecture people about how terrified you are when you hear about someone getting shot. You know what they didn't hear about? Chicago. They hear about Highland Park, north of Chicago, because that's very sad because upper middle classers were the ones getting shot. They didn't hear about the same number of people getting shot over a single weekend in Chicago proper. It's not on the news because it's so ubiquitous, it's so common. If only there were more good guys with guns there and people weren't disarmed, there'd be a lot less of the gang violence because the gang members would be fired back upon. Eventually there wouldn't be any gang members. They're outnumbered 100 to 1. Cops can't do anything about it. All they can do is after the drive-by, hopefully they're capable of apprehending the person once the killing has already stopped. That's all they can hope to do. The police are incapable of protecting you. And that's perfectly okay because you have the right as a citizen to defend yourself. That's about all. Peace out.